So I'm standing here in the old sea lion exhibit at the Virginia Zoo. This entire space is about to change. And you can see behind me, you can see how this place has just gotten a little bit overgrown. We're gonna fix that and we're gonna bring it back together. So let me kind of walk you through what we're doing and how it's gonna look when we're done. So right here on the other side of this fence right here, there actually is an old entrance, because this is the old sea lion exhibit here at the Virginia Zoo. So this used to be where they would come to watch the sea lions swim and do all kinds of stuff. There's even some cool houses and tanks and things like that that we're actually gonna incorporate into our design. But over here, right on the other side of that fence, we're actually going to install 2 gates, because they just fenced this off because they were not using it anymore. But there's going to be 2 gates installed right there, and there's going to be a bridge that comes out, makes a U, and then goes back across. So we got about 120 linear feet of 7-foot wide bridge that's kind of look like a pier. And that pier is going to be over top of our water features. So right here and right here inside of that U shape, we're going to end up having 2 wetland filters that are then going to trickle down to a series of 5 ponds on either side. So there's going to be a total of 10 ponds in here for our turtles, our painted turtles, our box turtles, different tortoises. They're all going to fill in this area here. And the idea is that this is going to be a real rehabilitation area for those, so that they can bring them to a place. You'll also be able to see them, view them, look at them. It's going to be a really cool spot. So that pier that comes across all the way over to here and there, it'll kind of divide the space. And then we're going to use boulders to create kind of a fencing throughout the space. I've got a quick design over here I'll show you guys right here on my iPad. So I'll put this in the shade so you can kind of see it just a little bit better. So what you see right here, right now, this is that pier I was talking about. These are those 2 wetland filters. And you kind of see that water just runs right underneath the pier and then kind of runs down to an intake bay. Same thing on this side. We've got a series of ponds on either side, and that is just allowing the turtles to have a place to hang out, swim in the water. We're also going to allow some sediment to build up inside of these little ponds so that the turtles can have a place to hide and they can actually dig down and burrow in just like they like to do. Now, in the construction of a pond that we know is going to have turtles in it, we have to do it just a tiny bit different. We have to make sure that while they're burrowing, while they're getting down into those rocks, that they're not tearing up our liner, because this is not concrete. This is actually an ecosystem pond. This is an ecosystem setup. And so we want them to burrow down. We want them to use the space as they would in nature. So what we're doing is we're doing our geotextile fabric underneath, then we're putting our liner, and then on top of that liner, we're putting another layer of geotextile, followed by a thin piece of what they call concrete fabric. Now that concrete fabric, it sets up just like fabric does. It goes in there, you kind of fill all the contours in, and then that concrete actually, as the water hits it and it gets exposed to the water, it actually hardens up. So that way when the turtles have their claws and digging away at the gravel and kind of burrowing in, it does not affect or damage the liner. It actually protects it like a nice membrane. So we're really doing what we can to make sure that this doesn't leak, doesn't have any issues in the future, but it also is biomimicry. So at the top of this waterfall, which is going to be over here on both sides, those wetland filters. And so the idea here, you know, a lot of times at zoos, they have a pump and dump method, which is where all the water that they put in an exhibit gets dirty after a while, and they just pump it and then they fill it with new water, which causes a lot of water waste. This is going to be a system that doesn't get used very often in zoos, but we're over engineering it and we're making sure that it is the right way, so that they don't have to pump and dump every single time that they are filling or changing out the water in this system. So it's a different system than what they usually use in zoos, but it's very close to what you would find in nature, because we're using bacteria, we're going to be using plants, we're using rock, you know, we're going for the biomimicry. So what happens in that biofalls, or the wetland filter, is that water kind of flows up through a series of rocks, and it has to kind of fight through the rocks. We use the 3 different sizes of rocks, and as that water fights to come up through those rocks, because we've got a pump coming up through there, it polishes the water. Now all the debris that's in the water that gets polished off on the rocks and it adheres to those rocks, we then have plants that are rooted down into the top of the gravel at the top of the wetland filter. Those plants' roots then start to use the nutrients that were polished off of the water. So the plants start to thrive, they use all the excess nutrients out of the water, and as a result, the water ends up being crystal clear. So that water then leaves that wetland filter, flows through our series of ponds, and then as it gets down to the bottom, we have what we call an intake bay. And that intake bay is essentially a large skimmer. It's an open mouth skimmer. So all that water can come in there. The pump is hidden down below grade. The water can swirl around. All the debris can be sitting right on top. And instead of having like a pool, if you think about a pool skimmer that gets clogged pretty easily, this is a giant skimmer, so that doesn't get clogged easily, so that all that debris can kind of swirl in there. And then our keepers here, the zookeepers, can just take a net or pool net or whatever and can just scoop that off like once a week or so. In the fall, it might have to be just a little more frequent, but just as a lower care system. So by biomimicry, by using the upflow, the wetland upflow filter, and then having our ponds with their gravel and no liner exposed and all the boulders in them, and then finally finishing out with that skimmer, we make a very low maintenance system that mimics nature, but also there's no pumping and dumping. That water is cleaned, reused, and then it's just like what you would find in nature as far as streams go and everything like that. So this is what we're looking at right now. You can see behind me, a lot of work is about to go into this exhibit. It's gonna change drastically. So the first thing that is happening right here, we're taking out these panels, we're setting our piers in here, and then we're actually gonna put a drain system in here. It's gonna have about 8 inches of 57 gravel with, we're gonna have drain tile in here that's gonna be socked, corrugated, and perforated, and that is all gonna go all the way out to a drain that's right there. So this is gonna be the gravel, then the drain, then we're gonna have geotextile. We're gonna have about 3 layers of that, and then our dirt will go right on top of that, and then we'll get to rocking and rolling with our water feature. I cannot wait to show you guys what this one looks like. This is a really exciting project for us. It really makes a difference. Thanks for watching. See you guys.